To the noble Toreador Primogen of London, Amelia Devon. Congratulations on your elevation, Amelia. I'm sure that the domain of London will benefit greatly from your advice and counsel, especially with as turbulent as the domain finds itself following the death of Mithras. The Toreador in particular will benefit, I think, from your realistic approach. No offense to the Roses, but the Toreador often lose sight of the notion that politics is the art of the possible, and when it comes to that art form, you are one of its most deft practitioners. I look forward to hearing about your accomplishments in the coming nights. I don't only write with congratulations, however, I also write to inform you that I have satisfied your request regarding the controversial Nosferatu, Madam Filth, and I trust that you consider the prestation between us settled. I also ran off that Redeemer fellow with the information you provided to me, so thank you for that. It was a reminder to me that you ever remain the rarest of kindred, a good sport. With the exception of the horrors of this second Great War, the domain of Paris has achieved something of a calm following the engagement with the Redeemer. It is a nice lull, but of course it couldn't last forever. A new horror has raised its head, and it is related to an ancient threat, perhaps the most dangerous our kindred have ever faced. And it is an enemy you should start preparing to see in London soon. I speak, of course, of the mortals, and their dreaded Society of Leopold, or as you may have heard it described in lay terms, the Inquisition. Every Ancia or neonate has listened patiently to the stories elders would tell of the Inquisition. Nights filled with terror and uncertainty. Cainites screaming as they burned in bonfires lit by fanatics. The zealous vampire hunters of the Church would watch with satisfaction as immortals died in extraordinary suffering. And while the Holy Office of the Inquisition was the banner from which these hunters derived their authority, the most dangerous of these men belonged to a group within the Inquisition, known as the Society of Leopold. Far from fading away with the Inquisition, they exist to this very night, now coordinating with the Vichy government to strike against kindred interests in Paris. Though the authorities don't understand that they're being manipulated, they remain very effective at finding and destroying the havens of Cainites, believing they are striking at communist cells or resistance meeting places. They have the political and financial support of the Vatican and vast amounts of knowledge of supernatural creatures curated over 1,000 years by the Vatican archives. We were able to catch a high-level Inquisitor trapped in a collapsed building following one of the Society of Leopold's attacks on a Ventru elder in the outskirts of the city. Prince Vallon has engaged in a variety of inventive methods of learning about these hunters, and has learned a great deal. For some reason known only to His Majesty, he is keeping this information to himself, and normally I would keep his confidence. But our relationship being what it is, and this threat being what it is, and so close to you, I would warn you so that you may prepare. While I hope you will not mention any details beyond which are necessary, so that Prince Vallon's secrets are not recklessly exposed. For all the danger represented by the Sabbat, it is a group like the Society of Leopold which chills me. The Camarilla outnumbers any sect which would stand against it, but we would be like dust in a hurricane if the mortal population were weaponized against us. Thankfully, the Masquerade still protects us from that possibility, as well as some desire for secrecy among these vampire hunters themselves. But Amelia, could you imagine a night where that changed? It all began with an improbable piece of bad luck. The First Inquisitor of the Society, Leopold von Murnau, was born with a particular sensitivity. He was allergic to supernatural creatures. No, I'm serious. Kindred, lupines, fae, all of them. He would get headaches in their presence, shortness of breath, hives, swollen eyes. God had created among the kine a Cainite radar. It wouldn't be surprising then when Leopold became a Dominican monk, and would quickly come to the attention of church authorities, who would notice the value of his affliction. In 1231, Pope Gregory IX would grant special dispensation to the monk for the purpose of warring against supernatural creatures, and for this purpose he would create the Society of Leopold, and with his unique abilities, he would help create the earliest protocols for this Inquisitor society to hunt down and kill Kindred, as well as other lesser supernatural beings. But it would be in 1484, with the papal bull issued by Pope Innocent VIII regarding the authority of inquisitors to stamp out witchcraft, that the Society of Leopold would really reach the height of its power. They would become a scourge across Europe, annihilating many vampires, with no small amount of innocent people falsely accused of being kindred in the shadow of the mortal Inquisition. The Society of Leopold became such a threat to Cainites that almost all sane kindred recognized the essential importance of the masquerade, even the Sabbat, except the dangers of these vampire hunters, though it must have been galling for those psychotics to recognize danger coming from the kine. Both sides in any conflict always have some say in its outcomes, however, and the young Camarilla and Sabbat sects began to work to influence the Catholic Church and their secular allies, eventually shifting the focus of the Inquisition and diminishing its resources and power. The Society of Leopold noticed this phenomenon, and its response was to retreat into deeper secrecy, hiding itself so that the Cainites missed it in their efforts to corrupt the Hunters' Holy War. While I mentioned the Society of Leopold as the most dangerous of hunters among the Inquisition, they weren't the only ones. But due to their quick thinking and discipline, they were one of the few hunter organizations to survive the waning of the public Inquisition. Now, as a closely held secret within the Church, the Society of Leopold was in some ways more dangerous than ever before. But such efforts to maintain the purity of the society came with some challenges, one of which was something ironic. The Society of Leopold, the hardest core of the Inquisition, found itself challenged by heresy in 1658. A Franciscan monk named Raphael Renzi was an abbot of the Florentine Canaculum, which serves as a sort of base of operations for the Society of Leopold in various cities. Brother Renzi believed that some of the supernatural creatures he hunted were able to overcome their inherent evil nature by honest remorse, and he accused the Society of pride for judging who among the remorseful had a right to live. Renzi was aware of a number of vampires, werewolves, and even mages, but took no action against them. Instead, he tried to minister to them, saying they were no different from any other sinner, and they too deserved salvation. For this idea, he was formally charged with heresy in 1658. After a quick trial, he was found guilty of treason and apostasy. He was burned at the stake a few miles outside of Rome. Following the Florentine Heresy, as it would be called, the Society of Leopold's power would wane for 2 centuries as kindred influence in the church reached its height. At one point in the 18th century, the entire membership of the society had fallen to 50 inquisitors. Things would turn around in the 20th century, however, when Pope Pius X would grant the Society of Leopold a great deal more independence from the church, and a more consistent line of funding and material support. In this modern night, the Society of Leopold has become a dangerous and effective force, using this great war as a cover for the annihilation of many Cainites and Lupines. Among the many threats lurking in the shadows, in my opinion, these vampire hunters are among the most dangerous. And of course, much of what makes these vampire hunters more dangerous than others is their organization. The leader of the Society of Leopold resides in Rome itself, near the Vatican. Known as the Inquisitor General, he has the absolute lifetime authority over members of the society. Beneath him serve the provincials, who are chosen by the general and assigned to specific geographical regions. There, they supervise and coordinate the local vampire hunter groups. Most provincials refrain from joining their brothers in the field, instead acting as advisors, mentors, or scholars. All provincials meet annually in Rome to discuss the previous year's activities and plan for the next year. Beneath the provincials are the abbots, who are charged with maintaining and running the canaculum, the central basis of operations for inquisitors in various regions. They are aided by the censors, who are part of the office of the censor, who ensure doctrinal orthodoxy and root out infiltrators, but also ensure that individual inquisitors do not abuse their powers or society funds. The censors are the constant, unblinking eye of the church, seeking out kindred efforts to infiltrate or control the society. These vampire hunters largely structure themselves into 4 orders. The first are the condottieri, bodyguards who protect higher inquisitors and investigators, an echelon of guardians and protectors. The second are the gladius Dei, the sword of God. These are the shock troops of the Society of Leopold, composed of elite, battle-hardened veterans. Membership to this order requires an invitation from the Inquisitor General's office, and these hand-picked soldiers are the tip of the spear for any assault by the Society. The third, the Office of the Censor, are the internal investigators and judges of the Society. They who judge the judges, the Inquisition within the Inquisition. And due to the importance of keeping the secret Inquisition safe from canine influence, the Office of the Censors is the most powerful of the orders, as they maintain the first line of defense against infiltration. Last, but certainly not least, is the Order of St. Joan, a proper order unto itself that was once separate from the Society of Leopold, but gradually was absorbed into it. The Order of St. Joan still maintains some autonomy in the Society for good reasons. The Order holds much of the Society's information and libraries on the supernatural, and they are in charge of cross-referencing intelligence that Inquisitors gain on the battlefield with these ancient stores of knowledge. It is also said that religious miracles are not unknown among the Order of St. Joan, manifested by practitioners of strange magics called theurgy. The hunters among the Society of Leopold specialize their focus on supernatural creatures as well, forming sects, quote-unquote. The Sons of the Tertullian and the Order of St. Michael, for example, specialize in wraiths and demonic entities. The Fathers of the Good Death and the Children of Lazarus dedicate themselves to the eradication of kindred. The Brethren of Albertus dedicate their hunts towards fighting sorcerers, the users of magic. The Sisterhood of St. Clair specializes in medicine and battlefield treatments rather than a supernatural being, but their medical knowledge has proven essential to the Society in saving the lives of many inquisitors and hunters. Pay heed to this warning, Amelia. The Society of Leopold represents a grave threat to individual kindred. They are dedicated, well-trained, and knowledgeable about us. They are absolutely ruthless, and filled with the zeal of those who believe that they are fighting by God's will. But for all of this, what worries me is that it could get much worse. Look around you, noble Primogen, and witness the power of the weapons of war the kind now wield. Our game of hide-and-seek played in the shadows of our secret world with these hunters is bad enough, as I said. They are more than a lethal threat to any individual canite. But what if this society was able to control the powers of a modern state, have access to the resources of armies, the likes of which we are seeing burn Europe from the Atlantic to the Russian steppe? The vampire hunters would become an existential threat to all of us, a potential annihilation of canite society as a whole. We must remain vigilant to prevent any such union between the Church's inquisitors and the secular governments of this world. Thankfully, the masquerade holds, keeping this alliance less likely. God help us all, should that thin veil ever fall. Sheriff Alexander Yates, Clan Bruja, Paris, April 1944.